Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 6, Episode 2 of Dualistic Unity. This time with tits! I'm Jackie, and I'm going to be one of the co-hosts with the lovely Miss Amanda this season. And yeah, just really excited to be here and chat with my buddy.
Likewise, I don't know where the conversation will go, especially starting off today. I brought nothing prepared because I just wanted to experience the carving through potential with you, Jackie, and I couldn't ask for better company. So let's get this started, everybody. Ow, ow!
Yeah, totally. I part of me wanted to like make a list of things to talk about, and I was like, "Ooh, well, we should talk about women's issues considering we are women." But I figured it's best to let those things just come up naturally as they will, as we are women. And also, we don't need to just talk about being women on here because that's not what we're here for at fucking all. So I guess I'll just start with, how are you, Amanda? How's your morning been?
I couldn't agree more. My morning isn't just about lady things. My morning has been filled with just life and just embracing what's available. I've had quite a few conversations today with some dear friends, and today has certainly been a day of listening and just being there for them. And in a couple instances, friends were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I just was thinking to myself, and I said to them, this is where our conversation is, and that's okay with me. Besides, if we were chatting about something else, those things would have still been on their mind. And so I'm glad that people have been opening up and sharing the things that are crowding the mental stage. It's important. Sometimes I forget just how much just being there for people, how much impact that can have without giving them the best advice or saying the right thing.
Yeah, active listening is such a important skill to develop, I feel. And that's something that we actually practiced. For those of you who've listened to the podcast before, I've mentioned a couple times that I'm doing a yoga teacher training. And part of becoming a yoga teacher or whatever is learning how to hold space for other people and not making it about you. So we did this exercise where like we paired up, and one person was assigned to be the listener, and for like however long they had to just look at whoever was talking, and whoever was talking would just talk about whatever is on their mind, anything they wanted to say. And you couldn't respond like at all, like no nodding, no facial expressions, nothing. And you just had to like really listen and pay attention to what they were saying. And I noticed that that was something I struggled with. Like immediately as like my partner was talking, she like we had a few things in common that like I wanted to like validate her feelings on, or like I don't know, just offer my own stories. Like I'm a relator. I've realized like I like to be like, "Oh yeah, like that's like this thing that happened in my life." And I realized that that's almost me making it about myself rather than just being an ear or like lending space. And I do think empathizing with people can be different, but I think there is a sensitivity there of where you're listening just to be there for the other person versus when you're just trying to, I don't know, make it about you. Does that make sense at all? But anyways, that was just an interesting exercise because I think so often like and it comes up in this conversation a lot too, like we will be listening to somebody and then we'll think about how we're going to respond. And then once we think about that, we stop listening. And so like you're not you're not really lending a full ear to that person. Because you think, as Andrew has said before, like whatever you have to say is somewhat more important than whatever they're currently saying. So I just thought that was interesting. Listening is something that I'm working on every day. And I feel like it just comes down to having faith in yourself that at the end, once that person stops talking, that you will have something to respond with. Like, and what you will respond with at that point will be a lot more appropriate to where the conversation is right now rather than where it was 2 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago or whenever you came up with whatever you were going to say. And it just seems to like be a lot more aligned in that moment. And just by letting go of control, I feel like you can share space with people a lot better.
I definitely struggle with listening. I get so enthusiastic about my response. I get so enthusiastic about, oh, brainstorming and coming up with options and trying to problem solve. And that's what it I'm always trying to solve some challenge, some problem, answer some question that I've come up with. And it takes away from the experience of listening to somebody and what they're going through or where they're at, because I don't need to come up with the perfect answer for them, right? Because I'm going to be at best making a guess with very, very limited information. And if anyone's going to come up with the best option or solution, it's going to be the person that you're listening to. And so almost just being that sounding board for their thoughts, they can process things a lot faster than having to share what they're going through and then also process how you may have an idea that relates more to your past experiences than it does to their current experience. So I resonate with that struggle so much. And before, it used to be more so that I absolutely without a doubt thought that what I had to say was more important. So I'd be cutting people off. I'd like bite people's heads off. It was talking with me 10 years ago, definitely I imagine would feel very different than talking with me today. But I also have less to prove. I can't say that I have nothing to prove, because there might be something that I haven't noticed yet that I'm still trying to prove, that's in the background. But at least for the most part, there's a lot less that I'm trying to prove to other people. And more importantly, I have less to prove to myself.
Yeah, and I think saying that you have nothing to prove anymore and believing that is trying to prove something. Especially in this conversation or like spirituality in general. There's such a I don't know, like people like to come off like they have it figured out or whatever. Like that's what a lot of these conversations end up sounding like somebody coming on from on high and like telling you how to live your life like they have it all figured out and like they have all the answers. But nobody fucking does. Nobody does. Like we're all like all of our perspectives, all of our consciousnesses, they're not really separate, and none of them are superior or more enlightened than anybody else is. Like we all just know me here now, our own experiences, and just uncertainty. Like there's nobody that understands what the fuck is actually happening. Like I thought there was at one point in my life, like I thought science had the answers and then I thought spirituality had the answers and then I realized that no, like at the end of the day we're just left with ourselves here now and like yeah, the best you can really do is be a sounding board for other people because we're our own best teachers. Like nobody can tell you what the right next move for you is because there is no right next move in objectivity. It's just whatever you decide to do next. And I do think that there is a sense of intuition or just in a moment you feel like, okay, this is the appropriate action for me to take. And I think when other people are offering their opinions and like trying to tell you what you should do, it's just confusing. And I think the way like I found so much clarity just being in spaces like the DU community where people aren't reflecting things back at you and not telling you what you should do and things like that. Like at the retreat, I felt like I really got a sense of who I am just naturally. when nothing's expected of me, and like what I wanted to do, the things I wanted to say, and even just in my life, just reflecting on the choices I wanted to make, everything just kind of came more into focus because there wasn't a pressure of like what should be my next move, because everybody there acknowledged that none of us fucking know. And even like people who have been here longer have just been here longer. They just have more context because they've done more things, but they still can't tell you what's right for you.
No, they definitely can't. But I definitely used to be the person who would tell you what to do. I so, oh my goodness. I I would consume knowledge like my life depended on it, because my identity depended on it. And at that point, my identity was my life. And there was the best way I thought to protect myself was to arm myself mentally with more information that was better utilized than everyone else. And really, there was nothing that I could prevent myself from that I was actually worried about, like the fear of failure. Like, there's no way I can protect myself from the fear of failure, the fear of rejection. There's no way I can protect myself from never being rejected, from never having a failed experiment, the feeling of missing out, the fear of that. Like, there's all the things that I was doing to protect myself would only work if I could actually control every other person I interacted with. And how empty that would be if I really could control everyone, so that like no one ever lied to me, or no one ever cheated on me, no one ever left me, no one ever, took advantage of me. It's like, how I can just minimize that from happening too much is by paying attention. And that doesn't require fear. To pay attention doesn't mean that I also need to be in panic mode on high alert, watching every single move in person that's around me. No, I can be attentive, and I can be paying attention while being relaxed. And it's so funny. I was watching a video the other day of a couple of runners, and this one guy is like running with like the fury of 1,000 men. He's just running, and you could see him. He's putting everything he is in, and this other guy just like zips by him, just la da 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 da. Just guy is just just relaxed, and just zooms past this other guy who must have been thinking about like every step, and moving his arms at just the right angle. And I'm imagining this, like I have no idea what he's actually thinking, but I imagine that he's thinking about every single move and about running faster, and he beat his time at he beat his personal best at home or something, or on his training tracks. And this other guy just looked so relaxed, and it was like being so relaxed, his whole body was able to just flow so smoothly, and he wasn't stressed out, and he wasn't panicked, and it was just like it was just water, like, oh, like his muscles were waves, and everything was just, they're crashing into each other, but it's just seamless, effortless. Everything is just coming together. And I never imagined that being more relaxed, you could run faster, right? If you were in a specific environment to run. And it was just another reminder that being stressed out doesn't add efficiency. Being stressed out doesn't add productivity. It doesn't add to the experience of anything. It's a hindrance more than it is a help. But I would have never guessed that a few years ago. I was very much type A personality. I want to get things done. I want to work harder than everyone else. I want to outthink everyone else. And although it did seem like in certain areas I was doing more or seeing more results, overall I was not living an enjoyable experience. I was stressed out, and even on my best days I was still stressed.
Yeah, and I think that's just because control or um oh my gosh, sorry for the noise. I have an active construction site next door, so we're learning to just deal with the noise, you know. So yeah, control creates drag, or not even real control, just doubt and a false sense of security or a false sense of certainty creates drag. It's like trying to paddle against the river. trying to go against stream because you think it should be going this way when it's just not. Like, I think we're just fed this idea that like we are intelligence. Like, we are intelligence. And we think about that in the human capacity, and we see that like whatever we think is how things should go. But yes, we are intelligence, but not in the form of thoughts. Like, we are intelligence in the form of like evolution and just the way that things naturally arise. We are a product of that. We are one with that. And it takes surrendering to that, and you'll just watch, but all of a sudden you're flying. And I've noticed this in my life so much when I stop trying to control how things go and stop trying to think I know best for myself. Things are just starting to unfold and starting to happen so much quicker, like with this podcast happening, doing the yoga teacher training, but also just in my own peace and sense of well-being. Like, you can't try to be peaceful. You can't try to be, I don't know, more spiritual or whatever. It takes surrender. But we're not taught that surrender is of any benefit to us in our lives. Like, it's so like go go go, control control control. That's how you get what you want. But who's to say what you want is what's best for you, or like what's, I don't know, what we want is often completely out of line with the way things will just naturally unfold. And really just thinking and trying to control is hitting the brakes. And it's like you're walking down a path, and your thoughts are somebody who's like standing in front of you and being like, no, wait, maybe go this way. There's a, I don't know, just freaking out over nothing and getting in your way completely, when otherwise you're just walking, enjoying the path. And you'll find out what's down the path once you're there. It's not about trying to steer and force and white knuckle life. No, like, honestly, that is the root of all of my psychological suffering, thinking that I need to control the outcome, when in reality I just have to show up on a day-to-day basis and let my intelligence do its thing, and having faith that I'm going to be fine at the end of the day. And if I'm not fine, I won't be there. I won't be there to know it. So, you know.
And you're right, we never know the outcome, even when we're really sure of what it's going to become. And then we have countless examples where we have organizations, government agencies, religions, people, groups for thousands of years have been trying to control the environment around them, the people that are in it, trying to control themselves, and it's never worked. You would think that after like a few times of doing something in a row and it not working, you'd be like, oh, maybe we should try something else. We attempted something for thousands of years and still nobody's like, guys, do we want to maybe? And you know what, that's so funny. Let me restate that. I know that we have, in very few instances, there have been aspects of ourselves that have tried to just have us stop and just have for a moment assess what's going on, just to see if we could change directions, and they usually been wiped out. That's that resistance. But I'm really glad that it's picking up. Like, there you can feel the momentum of like more of us, which, because of there isn't us, but you can just feel the momentum growing of this awareness that things the way that they are not working. Our structures, our societal expectations, the templates we use, they just don't work. And it's really nice to see more and more of us rejecting that and living on our own terms, living for ourselves. I think it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know, like, we realize that one, whatever form of government isn't working, and we replace it with a different one that's still just as much founded on control. And like, we can see in just how unhappy people in society are today, like, and also the state of the world, like, with global warming and just the way that industrialization has, I don't know, we're trying to control the natural world and use it for our own benefit, and and like exploit it because we feel like we need to have more to feel better, to be more valuable. Just trying to control the way we're perceived, the way we live our lives, basically just like trying to build walls around ourselves, but the walls are what's separating us. The walls are our prison completely. And I think what so many people are longing for now is connection. Like, I think that's why there's such a mental health epidemic these days, is because people are noticing that these structures, that these boxes, even identity is isolating them from the truth of what they are. I think deep down, people know that we're all one. Like, we are all connected. We're interdependent on each other. And the more that we keep scrambling more for me, like, we're making things worse. We're trying to make things better, but really just we're digging ourselves deeper into that hole. And yeah, so I agree. Like, I'm glad that things are starting to happen. People are starting, I think, to wake up to this understanding that maybe the way that we've always done things isn't the way that we should continue to do them. And I talked on one of the previous episodes we did with Andrew and Way about habitual patterns. Like, I think it is just habitual and comfortable for us to lean into these mechanisms of control. And I think that's why these things are passed down to us, because people need to convince others in order to convince themselves that they're doing the right thing. And like, I think what would actually promote healing is doing the opposite, even though it's completely unknown and uncertain and uncomfortable. It's always uncomfortable to do something new, but it's less uncomfortable than continuing to do what's habitual, that's digging us further into this pit. It's like me with my injured shoulder. Using my left arm is uncomfortable, but using this one is painful. It's like pain versus discomfort, the devil we know versus the devil we don't. And it's actually the devil we don't isn't even a devil. That's I think what will make us all free. I mean, that's worked for me in my own life. It's just leaning into uncertainty seems to be the way to find more context and build a more balanced life. And I think expanded outwards, the more that all of us relax and just surrender to the things that we can't control, we'll realize the shifts that we can make. And I think that's how change is eventually going to happen.
And continuing to call the bluff on all these boundaries. And so, I've heard people in a few instances. So we were talking like on a macro level, like society as a whole, and the changes that we're going through, and the resistance to that change, and how we would rather have traditional suffering than like some innovative uncertainty. It's like, no, this pain and suffering was passed on to me by my great 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 grandfather. I could not. It's just an honor of our family to hold on to this suffering that is bestowed upon all who share my name, right? you know but that tradition is just it's not required. It's a choice to continue it on, to pass it on. And absolutely, I agree with you, Jackie. It On a micro level, I think of being a cis straight woman. The labels have changed a few times, so I always I forget like which group I'm technically in. But in this group, I'll have people saying to me like, "Oh, I would never want to be a woman," and I laugh. I laugh when I hear that, because there is nothing that being a woman stops me from attempting. There is nothing that I can't learn. There's nothing that I can't do. as at least when we're talking not anatomically, like, right, like I I don't have the same pieces, and so my body works a little bit differently. But in terms of everything that's not physical, I can learn anything. I can develop any skill. I can go for any job. It may not welcome me. It may not want me there. It may not say that I fit the mold for that job or that profession or that industry. But the only thing that stops me from going at it is me. And so I love it. I love that I'm underestimated, because of the group that I just happen to fall in. And it's interesting. It's very interesting that I will, let's say, I'm not the shy person in the room. And when I was younger, somebody would say like, "Oh, that's very masculine." And I'm like, is it, or is it just that I like talking and I like listening to myself? Is it really because, I'm really embodying like manly energy right now in this boardroom? Or do I just am I just not as frightened to speak in the room? It doesn't really matter what group that you're in, because you can do everything for the most part. Like, there's just but when people tell you that it's like it's hard to be a woman, or I would never want to be a woman, I'm just like, you don't know what it's like to be a woman to begin with. So you don't know if you'd like it or you wouldn't like it, because there are plenty of men that don't want to be men right now. So it's not just being a woman that's like this inferior or less satisfactory gender to be. There are miserable people in every group. Every group that you can find, there are always somebody who wishes that they weren't in that group. And so when I chat with people, I'm like, do you think that you would have more problems being a woman? And they're like, well, no, no, because when you call someone out, they're like, no, I don't want to say that you'd have more problems. They just don't want our problems. I'm like, and what problems are those? What problems do you think that I have that you don't? You think that I go through more insecurity? Do you think that I go through more doubt? Do you think that I have more limitations? Do you think that because the structure doesn't welcome me, that I won't bust through with their own rules and redefine it? I've done certain things that I didn't even know I could do until I asked. And that was both men and women included, that didn't know that they could do that thing. And I just was like, hey, could we do this? Could we change this? And they're like, well, there's no rule that says we can't. So approved. And I just had the audacity to say, hey, can we just do this thing that's not on the menu? We've got the tools, and I see that we have the people, and we've got the time. So how about we just add a new option to the menu, or a new option to the list? And so I like that. And so I don't really need the system to welcome me as much as I make space for myself, and I navigate despite the barriers, because there's always going to be barriers regardless of the group that you're in. So it doesn't feel like there's any position that's better off, or that has so much more of an advantage on anyone else. It just feels like it's equal playing fields.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, I think it's just identity in general. It's not being a woman or being a man. Like, I think everybody equally struggles against the boundaries that society places around us, or we place on ourselves in order to fit into society and have some sense of certainty that people are going to accept us for who we are, and that we're going to be loved, or we're going to be successful in however we define that. And yeah, I don't know. I love that you say you love being underestimated, because for so long that pissed me the fuck off. I feel like I became aware of how I was perceived differently beginning in elementary school. Like, even just like on the playground, I was always like running around with the boys, like playing soccer. I was playing sports all the time. I was outside running around in the mud. Like, I was not, I guess, a girly girl. I mean, I was on certain occasions. I would like play with Barbies, with my girlfriend sometimes, but then I would go outside and be tackling boys on on the football field and shit. So, like, it always upset me that I felt like I was the same as everybody else on the inside. I was just me. And I don't know, I didn't understand why my gender had anything to do with that. And I think everybody feels that way. Like they just want to be seen for themselves. But I guess in order to gain acceptance in a society that views you in a certain way, you have to learn to kind of play the game. And so then it became wanting validation for being a woman, for being beautiful, for being soft, for being nurturing. And now I don't know, I'm still kind of having a struggle between like feeling free and expressing myself however I want to, but also wanting to be safe. And I think kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about like being aware without being afraid, because I think I've been afraid of, how my physical form would impact my safety, because there have been situations where like I've been too trusting. And then I went to the retreat and I felt super safe and I was like, "Oh, this fear is like I'm the one that's holding on to it and I don't have to hold on to it." And so I came back from the retreat and then I think I was a little bit too trusting of people and I let people get too close to me and almost like I was denying that anybody would have any malintent because I didn't want to have to look at that as a possibility. But I think there's a balance to be found between being aware that something could happen and adjusting my behavior accordingly versus being afraid. Like I don't need to live in perpetual fear of how situations are going to turn out. But also, I think being afraid makes it impossible for you to have sensitivity for just who the person is who's standing in front of you. Like it's hard for you to know or suss them out, like determine what their intent truly is. So you're not just pushing away everybody, pushing away men in general, just because they're men. Because that was the thing. I was like, I don't want to judge people based on them being men either. Just because I don't like being judged just based on the fact that I'm a woman. It should be a person to person thing. So I don't know. I'm still trying to find that balance in my life of having a healthy amount of skepticism or uh not doubt, but yeah, I guess skepticism is the word. Like be like not just immediately trusting people, but also not immediately pushing them away. But I think in general on the gender discussion, like I think we're all just fucking sick and tired of the labels. And I think that gender norms have become a thing just because it's easy to control people and like sell shit to people when they feel like in order to be what they are, they have to act a certain way, buy certain things, but that's completely fucking made up and arbitrary. Otherwise, we just are what we are naturally. And I do think to some extent men and women embody opposite traits or not necessarily like it's not like a solid line. Like there is variation, but it's not a rule. It shouldn't be a rule ever.
I know what you mean. It's not black or white. It's shades of gray. And so, I certainly want to, just expand on what you're saying that, because it's not black or white, but there are characteristics that we tend to see, and that's a result of certain stereotypes, certain expectations, the way that society encourages men to exhibit certain traits, and it encourages women to exhibit others and to straight up reject other traits that are assigned to either gender. And so of course, there are women who exhibit more quote unquote masculine traits, but it's just that they're just traits, and it doesn't really, it does feel like men and women are the opposite in many ways to each other, or the other end of the spectrum in many ways, but the spectrum has varying degrees, right? And so it's not to say that anybody is any one thing or any group is any one thing, but we are all sick of the limitations that the labels we use come with. And so to just know that they're always available to all of us. And so when you're talking about, like, you don't want to be anti-man or push away every man, but I do treat them all like they could be that one. And what I mean by that specifically is, like, let's say I'm walking down the street, at any point of the day, really, I tend to, but especially at night, I will cross the street as soon as there's a guy on the same side of the street as me. And that's not to say that every man will attack me, but I do that for the one man who would. So I treat them all like they're the one man who would, just because I'd rather treat them like they all would versus that they all wouldn't. Because if I treat them like they all wouldn't, I'm also treating the guy who would do that like he wouldn't. And that's where I would put myself in a position um, to be a little more physically vulnerable, because our size really isn't that much of a handicap. Or a better word, a disadvantage. Our size isn't a disadvantage. I've seen small people take out larger people, both men and women. And the same struggle we have as small women, small men have. They've got to deal with big guys out there too, and big women. There are some Amazonian goddesses out there, taking up space, and I love that. But I just mean that, everybody comes in different sizes, and being small isn't a disadvantage to somebody who's bigger, especially if you take self-defense classes, or if, say, someone is super drunk and you're sober, you just outmaneuver that giant and you let him stumble over his big feet and you walk away, But I do treat all people, by the way, like almost like I expect them to. I expect most people to be lost in their shit. I expect most people to not really be thinking about me. Not because it's anything personal, but because they're so consumed in the thoughts about themselves that they don't have space for me. And that goes across the board for both men and women. It's pretty much all people that I don't have a close relationship with. And even the people that I do, there's many of them, friends and family, who do not have space in their mind for me. And so I don't take it personally, but I don't forget that. And so I move in a way that keeps this character in mind. I I don't try to outmaneuver people in the same way that I used to, but I'm less dependent on people. And the way that I mean that is not that I won't ask people for favors, but just that I don't expect people to respect the boundaries that I place. I let them know about the boundaries, but then I actually don't expect anyone to actually listen to that boundary. And when I notice that they haven't, I just remove myself. I don't lecture them. I don't tell them that they have to respect my boundaries. I don't tell them that they have to do anything. Based on their choices, I can see exactly where I stand and I move accordingly. And so what I've started to notice is that when I was younger, I would ask people a lot, respect my time, respect me, do this, do that. I would ask for a lot. And what I've noticed now in my relationships, friendships, platonic, romantic, everything, is that I'm not asking for anything from anyone, honestly, but I'm giving, and I'm giving from a place where I'm giving only because I want to, not because I have to, not because I'm a woman, not because I'm supposed to be nurturing or kind or generous. I'm only giving when my cup is overflowing because I choose to, because I want to, and I expect nothing in return. And I make sure that I do what I've been doing this whole time, which is covering my bases and taking care of myself and being there for myself and being the best friend to myself that I always wanted, that didn't have any of the attachments or expectations that I've come to know in most of my relationships.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the only thing that we have influence over is ourselves and our own behavior. Like you can you can expect people to treat you a certain way. You can hope that the bet like other people have your best interest in mind, but in doing that you let your guard down and you make yourself vulnerable. And like I don't know, like I it's not about trying to have absolute control because you can't. Uncertainty is just always going to be there, and that's just something that you have to accept. And the best thing that you can do in that situation is just be responsible for yourself your own behavior, your own emotions as well. Like in relationships, you can't expect that people are always going to be there for you. So you have to be there for yourself. You can't be dependent on other people to feel okay. And on a moment to moment basis, having awareness and not making any assumptions about how somebody's going to treat you just because of who they are. And especially with people, like you can't just let your guard down because you know them. Like it's not just sussing people out on a person to person basis, but on a moment to moment basis, and knowing that at any moment they could flip on a dime because you don't know what's going on in their head, and you can't control that. So the best that you can do to keep yourself safe is just being as aware and as present as possible. But I don't know, we want to settle on ideas of people and who we can trust, and who, and we want to say that this person cares about me, this person loves me, they would never do that to me. And that's why we're blindsided when shit does go down, as it eventually will, because we live in an uncertain world, and there is no sky daddy out there protecting us and making sure that only good things happen to us. And the proof is in the pudding, because even religious people aren't exempt from uncertainty. Bad shit happens to them and then they just attribute it to the devil or whatever. But no, it's just uncertainty. And and it's hard to admit, but like if something were to go down, like if we were to be taken advantage of, if we were to be hurt in some way, we can't necessarily say with certainty that that is the worst thing to ever happen, that's objectively bad, because there are so many women who come back from situations like that and have such a profound impact on other women, and they can resonate with them, and they can help build something that keeps other women from going through the same thing. So yeah, like it's like we can't draw lines in the sand and say this is good, this is bad, this person is good, this person is bad, this person can be trusted, this person can't. Because you don't know. Like that uncertainty is always going to be there, and it doesn't matter, like you were saying, like if you are a man or if you are a woman, everybody is equally as vulnerable to uncertainty. It's just the way shit is. But there's no use being afraid of that, because just as much good things are going to come out of that as bad things. Like it's just uncertainty. Uncertainty is just neutral. But yeah, the best way to cope with that is not just focusing on the good and ignoring the bad, or focusing on the bad and ignoring the good. It's just having an awareness and sensitivity in the moment to what's happening, and being aware now is the only place you ever have influence over what's going to happen. Like if you're overly trusting of somebody and you think, oh, like this, and you're caught in a narrative about who they are and who you are and how that relationship is protecting you, you won't see the signs that will eventually lead to something bad happening. So the best way to stay safe is just to stay in the moment.
Oh yeah. If you had when I had been asked at like 25, like what advice would you give yourself like 10 years ago, so at like 15, and what I would have told my 15-year-old self at 25 was ask more questions. And I didn't realize it till now. The reason why I was telling 25-year-old me was trying to would tell 15-year-old me to ask more questions is because 25-year-old me thought that that was the way that I could get more information, and with more information I can make more well-informed choices, and that's why I could have prevented some of the hiccups that I went through. But now when I think about that advice, it's what I'm hearing now is pay more attention. And the way that I thought I could pay more attention is by asking other people more questions. What are you up to? What does this mean? What do you need from me? Like, like asking questions, like, where is this going? Why am I doing this? Do you need anything from me? What are your expectations? What are the standards that I'm supposed to live up to? And I thought I needed to ask questions, but it's not that. It's just paying attention. Because I was having a chat with another friend a few days ago, and they were just thinking about, like, like, how dare other people, like, you just go to the bar for drinks with your friend, and you don't want to hurt anyone, you don't want to bother anyone, you're just going out for yourself, hang out with a buddy, and then somebody becomes like a hot mess in the bar, and you're like, how dare they, like, how dare they become so combative, and then potentially that drunk person at the bar wants to fight with you, and you're like, I didn't do this, I don't deserve this. And it's, like, how can I avoid this? Like, the bar is supposed to, like, public spaces are supposed to be safe spaces in my friend's mind. And I thought, I get what you mean, and it is a bummer when it happens, but there are limitless choices. The person at the bar isn't really thinking about you. They're not trying to ruin your night in particular. They're not trying to attack you in particular. You're just a means to an end. And sometimes that means to an end gets a lot more violent, or it gets a lot more traumatic, depending on what someone wants to use you for. But ultimately, that has nothing to do with you. And all of that can be avoided as best as possible just by noticing, just by paying attention, being in the moment. And when you first hear that drunk person at the bar, that's the first sign that, like, okay, this could go into a place that maybe I wouldn't necessarily choose, but it's here. So I can choose to stay, or I can choose to go, or I can choose to walk up to that guy and say, hey buddy, how you doing? I had a rough day. So it looks like you're having a rough day too. You want to share a beer? Tell me a little bit about it. You could take it upon yourself to go talk to that person that just disrupted the moment. There are so many options. You could choose to ignore them, and some people can do that really well. They can hear someone getting attacked in the like two car lanes away in a parking lot, and they just block it out. Like, that's not my problem. So you can block it out, you can leave, you can decide to get more involved, or you can just go. But there's always so many choices, and it's just so interesting how often we act like we're helpless. We're helpless to the situation, we're helpless to other people, we're helpless to reality, and it's like, we're really not. There's always an option, there's always a choice. And when you relax, when you pay attention, you just have more space. You are more space to just take in what's available, what's around you. And then you feel less anger. I definitely had an anger. I definitely had a tendency, because I was just about to say, like, oh, I used to have an anger problem. It's like, no, let's rephrase that. I had a tendency to choose anger as my response. And I only did that because I never trusted myself enough to handle whatever happened. And although I would say that I could handle it, it was only from, like, a rage. Like, I'm just going to maybe outdo the other person, possibly. And I would do it with, like, the motivation of, like, how dare you disrupt my kingdom? Like, how dare you? How dare you? You must defend the lands from these enemy traders, you know? but but I could have easily just been like, oh, okay, looks like someone is not being that mindful. Maybe someone else is not paying attention. And they don't have to, because if you're paying attention in that room or on that street, then that's enough attention for you and that guy, or you and that girl, or that person. As long as one of us is really paying attention to what's happening, that's all that really needs to happen in terms of, like, diffusing a situation. Because when I think about the moments in my life where it was a little rough, it's always the moments where I tried to bury my head in the sand like an ostrich. It's always the moments where I tried not to pay attention to what was happening, because I thought it meant something about me, or I thought it meant something about what I could do.
Yeah, we just don't want to be responsible for our own actions, our own emotions. We want everyone else around us to cater to what we want. And we don't think about the fact that everybody else is thinking the same way, and everybody else's perspective of every moment is completely different. And in that state of mind, we're not seeing each other because we're thinking my perspective is right, you're wrong. And honestly, by having that perspective, you're contributing to the problem. Like, you're contributing to the division that makes it possible for people to hurt each other, like, to do things. Because if we all saw each other as parts of the same thing and had that just unconditional empathy for each other, knowing like, yeah, I've been there. I'm capable of this. I am not a quote unquote good person. It's like how in politics right now there's two very distinct perspectives about what's right and what's wrong, and the more that we vilify the other person and or vilify the other party and condemn them as being immoral or dumb or just not living in reality, and like convincing ourselves that we're only right, we can't bridge that gap. We can't take responsibility for what we're responsible for and build the bridge. And that's just perpetuating the division. It's like things like this wouldn't happen if we all owned our own shit. Basically, we're responsible for ourselves. And yeah, like you were saying, all it takes is you being aware of what's happening to avoid walking into things. But I feel like most of the time we're walking around with our eyes closed because we're afraid of what could happen. and and that makes you even more vulnerable. That's the case like 9 times out of 10, is that you just don't want to believe that something could happen, and so you don't look at it. You don't want to look at it. And maybe it's because you have a certain perspective of somebody that you're attached to and you don't want to let go of that perspective because they're filling some kind of void in your life. There's a number of reasons why we don't want to look at things. But yeah, it's like we're all walking around unconscious, like sleepwalking, bumping into walls, and like hurting ourselves, quite frankly.
Right? I walk around blindfolded and I wonder why I have so many bruises. So they keep bumping into shit, man. It's just me. It's not that the chair is in the wrong spot, is that I keep walking into it expecting the chair not to be there, forgetting the chair was there when I walked into it 5 minutes ago. And so it is, the responsibility is on us. And so I really like the reminders that Andrew and Ray give us when they're hosting our Patreon groups and the Zoom calls and recording their episodes, is that this is not about the community in that way. It's like, this is a community of one. Like, you are responsible for yourself. Like, you don't need Dualistic Unity in the same way that I tell my friends, like, you don't need me, you don't need my advice. Like, I don't need to be the one to tell you what to do next. Like, you got this. Because last time I checked, I don't lose any sleep about the choices you make. So I hope you enjoy those choices, because you're going to have to live them. And if you keep making them, I hope you really enjoy them, because like that has nothing to do with me. And although I may wish people the best, it's on them. It's always on them, because they are their experience. They are their life. And I'm not there to make people feel better. And also, calling, not calling people out, but making sure to politely refuse when someone's trying to put the responsibility of their life or their quality of life onto me. I say, no, thanks. That's on you. I handle my shit. You handle yours. Sounds fair to me. All right. Great meeting, team. But you have to. And I also am making a habit of thanking people when somebody calls me out. Because as much as it's as easy as it is to say, oh no, I'm not going to take that, it's, oh, that was not my intention. You know what? Thank you so much for bringing this, to me. Thank you for letting me know, because I'll be more mindful going forward. I didn't mean to be, inconsiderate, or, or I was rude this morning and I noticed that, and I'm so sorry about that. It had nothing to do with you. I was upset about something else and I took it out on you, and that's on me. My bad. And so I I'm definitely making that habit. I know we're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes, because we have been having an amazing chat. But right now, I just wanted to make a quick reminder that I'm going to be at the Netherlands retreat in a couple of weeks, and if there's any place that you can practice letting go of your story and having no help to maintain your story, it's at a retreat. There is no one wants to be your distraction. No one wants to help you run. So when you go to the retreats, it's on you that you take that responsibility, that you've been the main source of the suffering you experience, and that you don't have to, that you can put it down. And so thank you so much, Jackie, for bringing up your experience at the Vermont retreat in August 2023, and how important it is to just embrace an environment that is just there to let you put all that baggage, all that weight down.
As uncomfortable as it can be to face your shit, that's really the only way through it. Otherwise, you're just gonna keep running. It's gonna keep growing. And yeah, the retreats are the best possible place to do it. I mean, it's just such a unique environment, I would say. And not because it's completely safe, you know? It's just uncertain. And I don't know, I think I also went into the retreat afraid a little bit because as a woman I was like, uh this is putting me in a really vulnerable position, whatever, but just having that responsibility and being around other people that were responsible for themselves as well, like I did feel very safe because I was paying attention, and that's all you can ever really do. But Amanda, I like how you said like you've been appreciating people pointing shit out to you, because I think the same way that we don't notice things about other people because we're fixated on an idea of what we think they are, we do the same thing with ourselves. Like that's that cognitive dissonance. Like we can't see or accept certain things about ourselves that don't align with ourself, the idea of who we think we are. But once you realize that that idea isn't isn't true, and that you are everything within the entire spectrum of what's possible for a human, like you have the potential to be anything because you are everything. You can face those things a little bit easier, and also just with the recognition that there's nothing wrong with any end of the spectrum at all. You can sort of own your shit a little bit and be like, yeah, I've been a piece of shit sometimes. I've been rude, I've been selfish. I've but I've also been sweet and considerate and kind and gentle, you know? Like I'm not just one thing. And that responsibility allows you to refine, I think, the way you live your life and find a little bit more of a balance. And yeah, like it's important to just take that responsibility for all of it. And that informs your empathy. Because if you only think you're a good person, you can't relate to people that you see as doing bad things because you immediately label them as a bad person. And none of us are good people or bad people. We're just people with varying degrees of pain or varying degrees of awareness around our habitual patterns. But you can't pull anyone out of that. All you can do is be there with them and empathize with them, and be like, hey, I go through this shit too, and it's okay. Like it doesn't define who you are, and that's what allows for change to happen.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, that does allow for change to happen. You are the space for change, and the same way that you are a space for a habit to continue on. It's always on us, and the responsibility isn't a burden; it is a launching point, like blast off into space of potential and becoming anything that you want to be, having no limits. Like over the weekend, I saw Chris Angel in Las Vegas, and during the entire show, I just kept thinking, like, no limits. That there are no limits. I saw a man levitate 10 feet off the ground or 20 feet off the ground. And I'm like, my goodness, like, whether or not that was legit, it's still a possibility. it's still possible, and that's all I keep thinking is that there's nothing we can't do. There's nothing that you can't pursue. It's just it's on us. It's always on us. So I look forward, Jackie, to seeing you at another retreat. If you want more information about our retreats, just go to dualisticunity.com for more information, and there'll be links in the descriptions below. But I'm so excited, Jackie, to have many more conversations exploring all of our ideas, all of our limitations, exploring shit that we didn't even know we would explore. I'm just so excited. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us. And to up and away we go.
Blasting off together into the realm of infinite uncertainty and possibility. So exciting. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, Amanda, and just prove to myself that whatever I think I can do is is the only limit, you know? And if I'm not holding on to any ideas, then there's nothing standing in my way. And even if I do have ideas, I can step into that uncertainty and just see what the fuck happens. And yeah, I guess that's all we have for you today. Thank you for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.